mistakes, man. Okay, it's money on my mind. Thinking about inflation, it runs the open market like Kobe on the pavement. And that's not abrasive, conceptually it's basic. The currency grows with extension of duration. See, the relative cost is all I look for in a paycheck. With this, I've learned to practice patience. A basket in the blue and a basket in the red. The difference in the two is the difference in the bread. Families mark it down and then they send it to the Fed. So we use it as a tool to help us get ahead. Some call it outrageous, but me it's just whatever. The mice may be dumb, regardless they need the cheddar. But there's not much the government can do in open market societies, the invisible hands to rule. And if you dislike the change, then blame the greed of businessmen. But don't be surprised when they say it's none of your business, man. Competition drives the prices, and for some distress, but me, I call it progress. It's the Consumer Price Index. We call it CPI, then we set it at 100 and call it normalized. Yet disguised within the numbers of the basket is a rise in the topic of inflation is alright. It's the Consumer Price Index. We call it CPI and it monitors economies. Without it we would die. It's the Consumer Price Index. We call it CPI, then we set it at 100 and call it normalized. Yet disguised within the numbers of the basket is a rise in the topic of inflation is alright. It's the Consumer Price Index. We call it CPI and it monitors economies. Without it we would die.
I've been spitting and I've been talking about that green but not that cabbage. It's the effects of inflation on this track that I'm rapping, and my girl thinks it's mean, but it's actually more the average, and I actually think it's cool the way in which it happens. It's almost like magic, but it's not a dime pass, it's a dime to a quarter in a minute or a flash. Take the old CPI, place it above the new. Next we multiply the price from the division of the two, so then we get a number in nominal terms that expresses the change over time, so that we've learned relative price should drive our decisions, cause all that's the same are the numbers in division. They say, Dr. Bohannon, why are the prices up? I don't understand it. Well, I recommend you find the lyrics to this verse, young man, and if you're really that concerned, to actually demand it. I couldn't have said it better if I sat down and planned it, so listen again and learn your CPI basics, damn it.
$1, $2, $3, $4, in a couple hundred years it'll be a couple hundred more. $1, $2, $3, $4, in a couple hundred years it'll be a couple hundred more. $1, $2, $3, $4, in a couple hundred years it'll be a couple hundred more.
It's the Consumer Price Index. We call it CPI, then we set it at 100 and call it normalized. Yet disguised within the numbers of the basket is a rise in the topic of inflation is alright. It's the Consumer Price Index. We call it CPI and it monitors economies. Without it we would die. It's the Consumer Price Index. We call it CPI, then we set it at 100 and call it normalized. Yet disguised within the numbers of the basket is a rise in the topic of inflation is alright. It's the Consumer Price Index. We call it CPI and it monitors economies. Without it we would die.